It's very interesting to see game journos try and rally to gaslight people into thinking the PS5 is somehow outselling the Switch 2. Okay, that's been like the reoccurring thing since the Switch 2 came out, is that people are doing this thing where they're like, oh my god, the PS5, it's outselling the brand new Switch hardware. I suppose that's just because of how much more successful the PS5 actually is. They did this over and over and over again to the point where, like, there's a handful of people in the community who think it's true. And it's not, like, at all. Again, the Switch 2 is the fastest selling piece of hardware ever. Okay, like, the PS5 is selling as well as it is right now due to massive discounts and doing everything it possibly can to avoid from having to compete with the Switch 2 directly, okay? Like, it's pretty obvious if you look into it even a little bit, but the entire industry revolves around this idea that it has to downplay Nintendo at all times. So you have people like at IGN, or like you have Gandalf the Gay, like they're going around driving 40 minutes out to like a Sam's Club so they could like look at the game consoles to see how many Switch 2s are in stock so they can like push their agenda. Again, we've seen this play out time and time again over the past several months, is that they push this narrative that like Switch 2 is nothing but ports, that these games aren't doing well, that the console isn't selling well, and there's nothing to look forward to on the horizon. And obviously that isn't true. Obviously that's like something that is imploding in a big way, especially after the release of Pokepia. But they're still going to stick with this narrative, I imagine, until like the PS6 comes out. Like, I imagine they're going to fight to keep up the illusion that like the PS5 is this like super successful thing, and that like while all of the third-party developers just go out of business, and how all of the PlayStation exclusives just get lower and lower quality. Like, they're very, very out of touch with reality, is what we're seeing here. Like, I'm still seeing people like Nintendine complain about Mario Tennis. That's what he tried to do today, was like complain about Mario Tennis's sales. Is that like, those sales aren't lighting the world on fire. Like, hey, genius, it's a budget game. It's a sports game. They don't have to do that well, bro. It's like, again, they don't have perspective. They don't have imagination. They don't really stop to think that like, oh yeah, there are people who will play a lot of time into Mario Tennis. They have to do this thing where they're just like, well, it's not like number one in the eShop right now, so it has to be bad, even though that like, it did fairly well for itself. It was number one for a long time, even though that like, it's been this like huge success for what it is. Like, no, we can't accept that. We have to do this thing where we have to like rail on it for not like allegedly not selling Switch 2s. Again, we keep hearing this thing, we keep hearing this narrative that the Switch 2 has no system sellers, and that wasn't true even from like day one, because we had like Mario Kart World, we had Bonanza, and now we have Pokopia. But the narrative for even today, I think I've seen people do this thing, the Switch 2 hasn't had a big game since July. And of course they they write off all the releases we've had since then, all the third-party games, all the Nintendo Switch 2 versions of games, all the new games that come out. And there have been several. The narrative that the Switch 2 has nothing to play, hasn't been true, at all, even since, day one. But that's been, the reoccurring thing. And the narrative is falling apart now. The narrative has been collapsing, but we're still in this weird phase where the entire community is doing everything they possibly can to write off the Switch 2, right as we go into Tamagotchi Life, which is going to be a huge success. I would argue very well might be bigger than Pokepia. We're getting Pragmata, we're getting a lot of games in May, a lot of RPGs in the coming weeks, and of course we have the inevitable Nintendo Direct that could drop in the next several months. Okay, again, there's plenty of things on Switch too. So the entire narrative that people have that there's nothing to play on this thing, like you're just making yourself look retarded. It is kind of my opinion at this point, and that's been my opinion since the beginning. But like, I think day one, like under the hypothetical idea that like you bought Mario Kart World and you were disappointed by it, and like the Switch 2 was a waste of money. Like maybe that was a thing that could happen, but like there are so many games now that like you just can't get away with that, honestly. Like it just makes it look as if like you're going into this console like wanting to hate it. And I think that is like the reality of a lot of these people. The kind of like weird fan fiction stories they try and tell you. Like that my favorite one, oh yeah, I bought a Switch 2 day one, but I had to return it because it was just so low quality and I was so disappointed by like things that didn't happen. Okay, let's go. Nobody's buying a console day one and then returning it. Like the reason this entire like narrative came about was to try and justify how the sales numbers were so high and yet how the console was like allegedly failing at the same time. Like, oh yeah, I bought a Switch 2, but I returned it because it was just so bad. Like, it's laughably stupid, and it's something that we do have to talk about a lot more going into this. Like, this is something that we really do have to talk about, is like just the inherent industry bias against Nintendo. Someone like Review Tech USA will constantly rail on Nintendo and complain about them out of a desperate attempt for relevancy, for clicks, essentially. Like, because they know it's easy clickbait content. They don't buy Nintendo games. They don't play Nintendo games. They don't know anything about Nintendo consoles. And so they complain about them to try and, like, gaslight people into thinking the brand is on the way out, essentially. It's been like this for years. I've been calling this out for years. This has been a problem forever. And now we're kind of at the point now where I think it's becoming more mainstream, more understood that this is a problem, where a lot of people who don't play these games are dictating the way the console and games are being seen online. Like, the sheer amount of people I've seen who have tried to say that the Switch 2 has no games after having, like, some of the best games I've ever played in the past year, it needs to stop, honestly. Like, there's just so much to do on Switch 2 that, like, I honestly can't even keep up with it. I've been wanting to play Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness for years, and I haven't been able to, like, get around to playing it because I'm so busy getting through Pokepia. I'm so busy with Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. I want to play Tales of Berseria at some point. I got to get through Pokemon Fire Red. There's so much coming out that, like, I just don't have the time to play everything I want to play. So if someone like me who can't finish anything I want to play, because there's just so much of it, like, there is no argument. Like, there is no justifying. Like, there are games on Switch 2 to play. And the simple fact of the matter is the entire gaming industry is desperate to pretend that this just isn't true.